Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Just Another Talk. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about the school shooter at the high school in Georgia. I'm sure by now you guys have heard about the 14-year-old boy who shot up his school. He's being arraigned and charged with 4 counts of felony murder. And the district attorney also said he'll be facing additional charges. The dad, Colin Gray, also was arraigned this morning. He has been charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter and 2 counts of second-degree murder and 8 counts of of 8 counts of cruelty to children. Now, this is a little bit unprecedented because there hasn't been a time where, at least not that I know of, that they've charged the parent as well. But on this one, I think it's a little bit different. The reason I think it's different is because in the report, the dad did say that he bought his son an AR-15. For Christmas. That's already like, hey, that's illegal in Georgia anyways. Georgia, you have to be 18 in order to be able to own a gun. And so, by the dad saying, yeah, I bought it for him for Christmas, he's now included himself. I think this case is pretty straightforward, cut and dry. I'm not making the video because I want to talk about the situation. I was actually not going to talk about this at all, but I had multiple creators, the most prominent being Abba and Preach. They posted a video. I agree with what they're saying to an extent, but part of what they're saying as well, I think, is unreasonable. And I'll point out why. First and foremost, they attribute this specific gun violence and school shootings to the culture in America and the fact that they let anybody, quote unquote, buy guns and that, there's no kind of registry and this and that. And so that's one of the claims they made. They also made the claim that because we do have the ability to own guns and, essentially anyone can purchase a gun within a certain standards, of course. But I don't think he was trying to portray that. It seemed like they were trying to portray it in the sense of like, well, because you got that many guns in the U.S., what do you expect? That's what's going to happen. I genuinely disagree with the point. I agree with the points where, hey, they say, let's throw the book at the dad as well as the son. I agree, especially after reading the report and the fact that, he even says that the guns were accessible. They were never loaded, but they were accessible to him. And the other part of this as well is the FBI a year ago had actually interviewed the son, Colt, who they thought was posting threats on Discord, I believe, or some kind of social media. They couldn't prove it. They thought it was him, but they couldn't prove it. And so the FBI spoke with Colt and Colin, which is the dad. Within that conversation is where you get some of the details where it's like, hey, the guns are in the house, they're unloaded, but he does have access to it, but he knows right from wrong. I wanted to bring a different perspective to this whole story. Again, I was talking about Abba and Preach and their perspective, and I don't agree with it. Have you read any history? Like why we have our Second Amendment? Probably would come in handy. But regardless, I digress. The thought process of Abba saying that, well, you guys want guns, well, that's it. And he didn't say that. I'm kind of paraphrasing. But the implication is like, well, that's what you get. That's what you expect. Like, I don't even feel sympathy for you guys when it's like, it's not the gun's fault. You put a car in the hands of a crazy person, they could use it as a weapon too. You put a fork, a knife. To me, that's just lazy. It's just laziness to immediately say, oh, guns are the problem. Too many people have guns. There's no registry. There's no this. There's no that. There are background checks, okay? There are procedures that happen before you can just get a gun. Now, should there be more, or can we figure out a way to do this in a better manner? Probably. I'm not going to argue with you on that. You could probably find a better way to keep these guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them, as well as little kids. But in this scenario, the dad bought him a fucking gun. What are you going to do about that? How are you going to stop that? The reason that I made the video is because I'm looking at this from a different perspective. And a different perspective is the same thing that I said for the young kid who shot at Donald Trump. You are young kids and you're that disenfranchised. He's a 14-year-old kid. He's being bullied in school. Well, I'm trying to point out how there's a mold for every school shooter. They're all going to be a certain type. And like Dave Chappelle likes to say, the whites, regardless of what he's learning at home, he's going to school, he's around his peers, he knows right from wrong, he understands right from wrong, but he still chooses to grab a weapon and kill his classmates as well as 2 teachers. And we look at that as like, oh my God, we need gun control. There's no way. Like, we don't need gun control. What we need is figuring out what is causing these young people to basically commit suicide, because that's what he basically did. He got, I think it was 108 years is what he's looking at, plus more counts that the district attorney wants to add on, because he said not only the people that were hurt today are victims, so there's obviously more coming. But ultimately, my point is the same thing with the guy who shot at Donald Trump. He's a young kid, 18 years old, his whole life ahead of him. We live in America. It's not like this is a third world country. You're never gonna get out. You could work hard enough and get somewhere. It's gonna take some blood, sweat, and tears. To be that disenfranchised, that young, to me is a problem. And that's what I want to point out. And that's what I think nobody's pointing out. Look, throw the book at him. Throw the book at the dad. Like, all of that. I have no problem with any of that. But the real problem is not the guns. The real problem is young folks at a very young age are disenfranchised with our country. Why? Bullying is part of life, but the bullying was that bad that he had to bring a gun to school. It also says in the article that I read, the teachers had spoken to the dad, and the dad had talked about it. That's when the dad also said about the bullying. But again, this is the kind of thing where, like, at what point do we at what point do we stop looking at the symptom and start looking at the sickness? It's not guns. It's not guns. I'm sick and tired of hearing that. It's not guns, because plenty of people have guns and don't run around and do dumb shit. So it's not the guns. It's the thought process and the mentality and the environment that a person is in that dictates them to go do something. I don't believe you're just, it's because of the guns. If he didn't have access to guns, he would have killed somebody regardless. He'd have stabbed one of them little kids. He would have had enough. Or maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I'm not trying to defend him. I'm really not. I could care less. But it's definitely something that I've noticed in a lot of school shootings. And in general, they never talking about why this young kid, or this kid in general, goes into a school and is killing people. We all know that's not okay. That's not right. And there's got to be something behind it. The other thing I wanted to bring up while I was researching the article, it said that this was the 45th shooting of the year, and I was really like, whoa, like, that's a lot. 45? Not to mention that in the same article, it said that earlier, like, it was a couple days after this shooting in Baltimore, there was a 46th shooting, which it happened in a high school as well. So that makes it 46 total this year. Not to mention we're in summer. We were just in summer, so there was no school for like 2 months, but we're at 46 already. Like, this is troubling, I genuinely think we got to look at the parents. I don't have any kids, so I understand that, I might not completely see the picture, but there's no way a healthy environment breeds a kid who brings a gun to school. That doesn't make sense to me. And maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. You guys tell me. Maybe I'm missing something. Another thing that the dad did say as well is that he took him hunting a lot and shooting. So he knew how to use the weapons. He knew the safety of them. He went over all of that stuff. So regardless of what you want to think of the dad, if he did do those things, which is gun safety, and anybody who owns a gun does gun safety, because you don't want to shoot yourself or anybody else for that matter. So if he did do some gun safety, then I can't completely say that I blame him 100%. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't be culpable, because you can not get a lot of blame, but be culpable for something, or be the cause of something, by not locking up your guns. Even though you don't have to by law. As long as you're in your house, you can have them however you want. But, if you have kids, like, you should have some kind of thought process of like, yo, yeah, he knows how to use the gun and all that stuff, but you don't want him to be able to take that shit when you're not there. Some common sense is required too. And that kind of pushes us to the next point, which is you got a lot of people having kids who probably shouldn't have kids, and you got people who own cars who shouldn't own cars. Like, you have people who buy guns and probably shouldn't have got a gun. And so, again, I just want to focus on the fact that it's not a gun problem. It's a people problem. It's an environment problem. It's a problem of what each person goes through in their environment, especially these young kids, extremely malleable. Being bullied is something that's not a joke either. It's something that, it's definitely not fun. Obviously, example, this little kid. But there's got to be something outside of the bullying. That's another thought process I had. But we got to stop blaming the guns. And I really don't think that a lot of common sense people believe it's the guns. That's immediately what the media runs to. We got to stop the guns. Like, we got to stop the gun. Like, no, guns keep a lot of people safe. Not saying that we should accept school shootings, because we definitely shouldn't, because there's got to be a way around it. I think school shootings are a phenomenon of the last 25, 30 years maybe. What was the first one ever? Columbine? I don't think I heard of any other school shooting before Columbine. Why was it not happening then and it's happening now? yeah, there's more people now, and there's more. I guess you could say there's more guns, because if there's more people buying guns, right? But the laws haven't changed. It's still wrong. It's still illegal. We still have a moral compass. Like, most people are not out here taking their gun out and shooting somebody because they're mad or annoyed, or because they were bullied, or because they were hurt. Usually, self-defense is when you use your gun, outside of certain instances of assholes. So yeah, I wanted to make the video because I saw that on Abin Preach's video, and it didn't sit well with me. I don't agree with that. I think it's short-sighted. It's a lazy thought process, but whatever. To each his own. It's their opinion. So with that, don't forget, we're on path to try to get 1,000 subscribers. I need your help. So make sure you subscribe.